like obviously you can then decide, you can make a threshold because there's no red. You can make a threshold of like 85% probability of occurrence, and you can just go and survey these. Once you can mask out the areas below 85%, you can just go to the areas and you can survey and see if you can see butterflies. And yeah, we got access to the impact areas and we found 8 new colonies there. So like 8 colonies is still not a lot, and it's especially like kind of concerning because these areas burn a lot. So what happens is like a burn would go through one area and you would expect another, and then once that area is burned through and it starts recovering, a population from another area will come and colonize this area again. But if you have a huge fire burning everything, you might have a huge problem. And we also know that there's still limitations, so it's still concerning. But just knowing there's a bit more, like the populations outside the impact zone is not the only populations, was like kind of a breather. Just this map is on a 10-meter scale, like the LiDAR data and the elevation data are scaled to 10 meters, and then the AUC is just the index of how accurate this map is. It's the area under the curve. You can make areas that's predicted where the butterflies occur, but where the butterflies occur versus areas predicted where the butterflies don't occur. And perfect is 1. A really bad map is 0. 9.81 that's the highest I've seen for a butterfly map. And omission error 3% is the amount of plots that you have that we predicted the butterflies to be, but they're not. So I'm pretty proud of that map where we've figured out the...
Can you point out the red areas? I just don't...
off the camera. so yeah, so I'm under... It's sometimes because I want to show maps, and like the landscape has a huge influence on the butterflies, but I'm under, because this butterfly has been collected, this is how it was how it was discovered. I'm like, yeah, we can't show points and the maps together. So this is just zooming into one of these streams to make you even more excited. There are points where the butterflies occur, and you can see like this is the land cover variable map that show, and the vegetation structure map and the terrain variable map. There's huge differences between these, and then you can start looking at interactions between these areas. Like I said, like for example, you can pick up wetlands with a wetness index, and wetlands with like low canopy can give you this kind of map of, like, just mask it out a bit more. And this is a map of all the areas of for the butterfly, for this butterfly. So in the end of the day, we identified 121 suitable habitat patches where the butterflies might occur on Fort Bragg. These areas are not only areas where we predicted suitable habitat. There's about 30 of them. There's also areas where we know the current colonies are. There's also, we decided to just add in my prioritization to add old sites, simply because, like, if you want to restore habitat, you can, this would be a good place to start, and current restoration areas which is already old areas that we decided to just trim a bit of the vegetation a bit and add these aqua dams to just like mimic the beaver activity, because the beavers aren't there. So I decided to use I'm really excited about connectivity theory, and I wanted to use connectivity to prioritize these reintroduction areas. Connectivity is important for me because I travel a lot, and this is my Facebook friend map, and it shows how connected I am over the world, and like this is a really important way for me to decide where I'm going to travel next. United States, been there. South Africa, been there. Australia. I'm actually going to Australia on Tuesday, so because my Facebook profile said I'm pretty connected there. So connectivity is of course not only important for people that's on Facebook, it's also important for wildlife, because essentially there's a tremendous failure rate amongst reintroduction programs, And I argue that to reintroduce your butterflies in a highly connected site, you have kind of an insurance policy that you, like if the butterflies don't like that site very well, they have the freedom to move to another site much easier than if they need to cross a difficult landscape or if they have to move further. And also, once, like, hopefully your reintroduction will be successful, and then the surplus individuals will be able to move to unoccupied sites nearby, as opposed to when you have disconnected further on. And in the long term, the butterfly, the reintroduced individual will be able to adapt their ranges to shift dynamic or changing environments. For example, we know that this butterfly live in early successional vegetation, and hopefully if you have more fire or beaver activity restored, like the current patch will not be there forever, so it just allow them to move to a new site once that site, or a better site, as this current site moves to later successional stages. So the way I've done my connectivity analysis is using a called graph theory, and essentially what this does is it represents the landscape. It's a mathematical algorithm that can analyze flow and connectivity in the landscape. Essentially, you represent your habitat patches as nodes, and your potential dispersal chains or dispersal paths as what they call edges. And it's essentially you can just figure out what this is the more likely route the butterfly or individual will move through the landscape. Essentially, So there's two ways that I prioritize these reintroduction sites. I identify the hubs in the landscape. That is the habitat patches connected to the most other habitat patches, and then I identify cut nodes, which essentially holds the network together. So if we lose that cut node and there's a dispersal limitation for these butterflies not to be able to anymore reach there, this population will be split into two, and if you like that causes a smaller population in one area, and that has its own problems with like genetic issues as well as demographic issues. It's a higher chance for the population to be wiped out by environmental catastrophe, and then the other population can't colonize this site. So this is why these kind of cut nodes holding the landscape together is very important.
Tony, when you talk about edges, in your context there, what are edges?
So the edges is the dispersal paths. So you have your nodes, which is the habitat patches.
It's not just what you labeled edges, it's all the lines.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So here is some more location data. So here's the entire St. Francis Satyr population, the 121 suitable patches we identified over Fort Bragg, and you can see like the edges represent all the connections between each of these different paths, and then between these different habitat patches. And what the graph theory will do is it will essentially decide that what's the easiest path for any one of these nodes, which is like an individual, to move to any other node. So so what I found is like just using a simple graph that looks at the distances between patches, Euclidean distance, which is just the quickest way to get to the site regardless of the landscape. This is your network hub, the most connected site, which is connected to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 other habitat patches. So that, for example, just to give you an idea, that patch, it's easier for this individual to move from there and then to that side than to move straight to that side. That's the kind of analysis that graph theory does. Because there's no dispersal limitations, there's no network cut node identified here. Essentially, if I lose that patch, this side, it might almost make it easier for the butterfly to move from that side to, for example, that side, because it will be a direct link. So that's why there's no network hub. Once you identify Once you've introduced dispersal limitations, for example, what I introduced here is that the butterflies, I use that habitat map that I use, saying that butterflies move easier through, for example, streams than they move through like pine forest. And secondly, we know that butterflies, assume that butterflies only travel 2,600 meters from a site. This is a kind of landscape that we get now, and I identified a network hub for each of these 8 different populations. So essentially we're seeing here, but Miami, the St. Francis Satyr only occurs on 8, the network, 8 what we call meta populations. And interestingly, these sites are all reintroduction sites that are identified, essentially suitable habitat patches, but there's no butterflies in there. So that